and welcome today. We have with us Bernardino Cisneros, and happy to have him here in Albuquerque. And can you just start us out a little bit to tell us how you got started with genealogy and interested in your family history?
Well, I got started because I was always curious to who I was and what my background was. And as a youngster, I would ask my grandfather, and he would fill me in, and ask my grandmother, she'd fill in with her side of the family. But then later on, I found out that there was a third side of the family. It's called a French name called the LaForette, okay? Capital L-A, capital F-O-R-E-T-T-E. And that's just where my grandfather's mom comes from. Okay, she's I think it was one of 10 children. And so she married Bernardino Cisneros. And it's my understanding that they only had one child, which was my grandfather. She died when my grandfather was a young boy. He later married a lady from Dixon, New Mexico. And they had about, I guess at least 5 or 6, mostly boys, maybe a girl or two. And we all grew up together as a child. I knew that I was related to people in Questa, but I didn't know how closely or in how many. I found out when I went to school there in the 9th grade that basically I was related to probably 95% of the people. Yeah, the reason is because 5 Rael brothers who lived in Chama, almost 90 miles directly east, came directly west, and they came east and over the mountain and landed in a tiny town called Tres Piedras. From there they found the Rio Grande and found a way to get across and climbed to the top, and they all went to the village of Questa, which was possibly in its early stages of its third beginning. And all 5 brothers were businessmen. They all had either stores, grocery stores, or stores that sold basically everything. Either together and some separated, and they had their own stores. And the 5 brothers married 5 girls from 5 different families.
And was that in Chama or Questa?
No, in Questa.
Oh.
In Questa, they married girls from 5 different families. So those 5 brothers married 5 different girls, and say each family had at least 2. Okay, that put it at 10. And those 10 say had another 2. Okay, those 10 had another, what's that? Now we're at 40. Okay, and so at one point when I first went to Quest, I realized that there was no way I was going to have a girlfriend there. We're all cousins. And in my freshman year, I think that we had a class of 35, my senior class, and I was probably related to between 25 and 30 of them. So, but it was nice to realize that, hey, this is home. I'm related to everybody, you know? And it made things a lot simpler for me to, well, of course I spent summers there, and but once I went to school, I met other people I'd never met before. So once I realized that I was a native, that it made it easier for me to blend in with everybody. And I also spoke the same language. My grandmother did not speak English. She spoke basically the old Spanish. My grandfather, I went to 5th grade. He learned English and how to read and write. His penmanship was really beautiful, but his English was also wasn't real limited, but he could speak. But at some point, he sort of ran out of words. But he was an intelligent man. He owned approximately 35 acres in Questa. We raised cattle, sheep, rabbits, chickens, dogs, of course. And we had a beautiful life. I would spend every summer there. My sister and I would spend every summer there. And then before school started, my mom and stepdad would drive from Albuquerque to Questa to pick us up. And I like to say that we cried all the way to Espanola before the church stopped. It was hard to leave them. It really was. And at one point, we had a local that he sold and purchased animals. Okay, and he drove up one day in his big truck with a little pony in the back, and I saw the horse, and I started wondering, what's he going to do with that horse? I need a horse. So he knocked at the door and went outside to talk to him. tells my grandfather, I got a little pony in the truck, same size as your grandson. I bought him from the Taos Pueblo. The owner got thrown in jail, and he needed money to get out, so he had to sell the horse. So we bought the horse. She was a little pony, like you said, just my size. And I had that pony until I went into the military in 1968.
Wow.
And when I got out, well, she had a colt.
Oh.
It was sold to a local relative. That horse lived to be 32 years old.
Wow.
And my horse was lent out to a friend of my grandfather, and they tied a loose knot around his neck. And the rain came and lightning, so he pulled back on it, and he ended up choking. And
Oh, no.
and they found him stretched with a rope stretched out, and him lying on the ground. And I got a letter from my sister telling me that the horse had died. It was pretty hard to take, but I was in Europe, so it wasn't. It was far. I was far away from it, so it hurt me, but not really as much as if I'd have been there. And what my grandfather did, I found out, is he took the horse and he cut it into pieces and dried the meat. Okay, and that he would feed to the dogs in the wintertime as part of their diet. Anyway, I ended up graduating from Questa High School in 1965, and my grandfather, who I held on the tallest pedestal possible, was killed now in February the 20th of 1966 in a hit-and-run accident.
Oh, no.
And the man that was killed with him, his son was my classmate, but him and the old man and I would herd cattle off the Red River, because they weren't allowed to be there, into the ravines and take them up into Llama Canyon. And it was a beautiful stream that came out of the canyon. So we'd take the cows as far as we could, and the path got more narrow, and at one point there was logs that fell over it. So we tied the horse to an aspen and or force the cows to jump over those logs that were in the path. But about a week later, one of our cows was back by the river. And it didn't take long. She was, I guess, Angus. Her mother was a Holstein, and we would milk that cow for the milk that we used. And when I milked her, I had to tie her. I had to tie her from around the neck so she wouldn't run, and around the legs so she wouldn't kick me. And when my grandmother did the milking, she'd come up behind her, start patting her from the back and talking to her. She'd go up and pat her on around her neck and her face. Then she'd come to the back and put the bucket down and start milking. The cow didn't move a bit. With me, I was a bit younger, I guess a little more. I wasn't into being as kind as she was. And, they realized that she was an old lady and she wasn't going to do any harm. And I also realized I was a young kid. I was harmful. I could, I don't know why, but it was just part of me, I guess, that, I was kind to her, but still I had to, I had my limits, and so I had to tie her legs. But I also milked every day for possibly 2 or 3 years. Summer, not winter. And when she had the calves, she had a lot of milk, so we shared the milk with the calf, and we made butter, and we had fresh milk. My grandmother, we put it this way, my grandmother did not speak English, but we didn't have a single recipe book in the house. There was no use, but everything came out of her head. Everything that she baked, cooked, or made came out of her head. So, and she was good, I'd tell her I wanted a chocolate cake. She would take down the powder, the sugar, the flour, and within an hour or so, it was coming out of the oven. Best cake I've ever eaten.
Mm-hmm.
She made jellies every year. We had an orchard. We would peel the apples at night, and she would take the peeling and the core and put them in she already had the wood burning stove, and she put them in that bucket, in a pan, and boiled them. And then my sister would help her to put them in I think a sieve, okay, and we would pour the juice from in there to keep the small pieces from going into the water. And then she would boil that and add I forget what it's called for jelly, and she'd make 15, 20 jars, and she also canned choke cherries, real small, and she would can capulin. She would can capulin. We would help her pick it, and when I'd go back, like in the fall or sometimes in the spring, I take a little pint jar, and we had a ladder went up to the like the attic. I sit there and I look down towards the river, and I see all the cows grazing, you know, and I think someday all this is going to be mine, all of this, because my grandma told me that yes, when I die, this is going to be yours, and the other 17 acres across the field, about maybe no more than half a mile. There were another 17 acres there, from one road to another, from Cumbres Road to Kaya Road. And still, it's the only piece of property that doesn't have any houses on it. Okay. And I would reminisce about my life, you know. But when he was killed, we had talked about it, but he didn't. Well, if he wrote a will, we couldn't find it. So without a will, I got left behind. So one year, my uncle, who lived in California and L.A., came to visit. My grandmother was living here in Albuquerque with my mom. I found out about it, and I told my grandmother that I was going to ask him for property. So I drove up to Questa, staying at my grandmother's house, and we talked a little bit. And I told him that I was there to ask him, you know, about my inheritance. He gave me a strange look. He said, "Inheritance? I don't think so." He says, "If you want anything, you're not going to get anything from me. But if you want anything, I get it from my mom," meaning my grandmother. So when he said, you know, that I wasn't getting anything, he closed the door. But when he said, if you want anything, you got to get it from his mom, my grandmother. So the door opened up again, wider than it was before. So I came back to Albuquerque. I went to my mom's, and we sat down to talk, and I told that my Uncle Larry said that I was not getting anything as far as property. And I said, so he told me that if I want property, I had to come and ask you. So that's what I'm doing. I'm asking you for property. She said, okay, tell me where you want and how much you want, and let's see what we can do. So I ended up with 6 1/3 acres out of 30-something, and I'm happy with it. You know, I used to drink a lot and be in party, and they held that against me because they figured I couldn't do all that, you know, all that party, and I would be able to take care of the property. So when my aunt died, I found out that the paper that we made, quick title deed, was I had my copy. So my son and my daughter and I went to the courthouse in Taos to put the property in their name. So I went looking for it, and there was no paperwork in the books. Okay, and everything's got to have a paper there. But my paper had the date and the page and the number on it. So when I looked, it was missing. Okay, but a little cousin who worked there in the jail across the way had a lot of connections. So I can't really accuse her, but I think she was the closest link to having that disappear. But luckily I had my copy, so used my copy to get the property. Well, at that point, I was trying to get it in my son and daughter's name, but everything now belonged to my aunt and my cousin. So because I had the deed, I had to go find an attorney, and she suggested we write a letter to her and tell her that, look, we have the deed to the property, and we probably think that you might have taken it by accident. So because I have the deed, I'd like for you to give it back to me. So she agreed. She knew she was wrong. So she gave it back to me. And I'm thankful, but the property, my grandfather, like I say, was killed in February 1966. From that point until today, nothing's been done with our property, zero. It was now it's full of chamizo, where before it didn't have one single chamizo, held alfalfa. There's a row about maybe 100 feet long of the old plums from the 1600s. They're all dry, you know. I went out there, I drove my truck, and I sat there, I looked at it, and I came close to shedding a tear, but I realized that no matter how many tears I shed, nothing's going to change. But I photographed the mountain, that Flag Mountain as it's known, and turned around, and my cousin has a property rented out. They have cows on there, so I picked up a bunch of cow dung and brought it to Albuquerque, and have an old chest freezer, and I put it in there, water, and I have a bunch of worms, and I have good soil for growing stuff. Right now I grow trees, cherry trees, apple trees, and I resell them.
Here in Albuquerque?
Mm-hmm. We meet here every Saturday. So I want to start coming here because from these people, they can do the research. I come up with and I'm going to learn how to do it myself. And I have my son and daughter have a relative from the Penasco area who's a professor at Arizona State University. He does a lot of genealogy. He goes back and finds the relatives and then the kind of blood they have blood types and all that kind of stuff. So through them, I'm going to find out about the LaForette family, because it's my understanding that him and his dad were living in Canada, okay, with their parents. And their parents were born in Canada, but their parents came from Africa. So they were supposedly African, but in Canada, black people were not slaves like they were here in America. So they lived there as free people. So but I need to know the genealogy from that family before I can say that is true. And I want to do that. My grandfather, on my grandfather's side, probably I know most of her relatives in Questa. Sometimes I meet somebody. I met one girl the other day, and she was just like her mom. Her mom and I were classmates. And her grandfather and my grandfather were first cousins. So I said, "You're related to Kathy, huh?" She said, "How do you know?" So you look just like her. So I told her I was her cousin. She said, "Oh, you are?" And I said, and I mentioned her great-grandfather's name, her great-grandmother's name. And so she knew that I knew something about Questa. So all of a sudden, we started talking like we've known each other all our lives. And I met the other day at a farmer's market on a Sunday. A girl, we started talking. She was a teacher there in Questa. And she told me her last name was Villalpando. And I said, "Who's your dad?" She said, "Richard." "Also, Florina is your mom?" She said, "You know my mom?" I said, "Yeah. I also know your Uncle Albert. He was a party guy with me, and he died many years ago as a result. His best friend was going to leaving for the service the following day. So he got really super drunk, I guess. We went home. He laid flat. He started snoring. He swallowed his tongue. He was so passed out, he basically smothered himself. And so the next morning, his friend, Dad taking him to Taos to get on the bus to go to come to Albuquerque and get the train to El Paso. So he found out about 2 weeks later that his best friend had died that night of the party. And he was in the Army. He had time to deal with it. Get up in the morning, run your 5 miles, and go eat. Listen to people scream at you, stand at attention and crawl. Take a rifle apart and put it back together in semi-darkness. But after a while, that's your life. And once you do it 3 or 4 times, you can take that rifle and put it back together, no problem. And my basic training was in Fort Bliss. Then from there, I went to Indiana, Fort Benjamin Harrison, Indiana, for a while.
Were you drafted, or did you?
Well, I was both. I moved to Colorado to work, and I was working at the Brown Palace Hotel, doing a menial job. When my cousin forwarded a letter, said, "Dear greetings, you have been selected." Oh yeah, selected to come to Albuquerque for a physical on such and such a date. So I had to quit my job and come in. So we came to Albuquerque by bus from Taos, and I passed my test. It was, I think, in August of '66, and I got drafted, and I got my draft letter for November. So when I got in, they gave us an opportunity to re-enlist for another year for a school of our choice. So I did that because I figured might as well. Otherwise, I'm going to be in the 11 Bravo, which is infantry. And infantry, all you do is shoot at each other. And I didn't want that to happen to me. Okay. So I volunteered to be a mailman. But right below that was photographer. And I said, damn it, why didn't I do that? So I've been doing photography now for 50 years. I learned from a photographer from New York.
When you were growing up, did your parents or grandparents use any kind of herbs or plants when you got sick or to heal anything?
Well, my grandma used to like mentholatum. When we had a sore throat, getting a cold, right on my neck area, my throat, rub it on nice and thick, and that was a cure-all. And then her favorite was Noxzema for her face. She always had the little blue bottle of Noxzema. And my grandfather had something called, volcanic oil, little bottle, and had a picture of a man walking in with a lame horse on one side. You turn it, you got the blacksmith fixing it. On the next side, he's galloping away, his horse was cured. And that told the story. And then the backside told what the ingredients. And we used that when, as a kid, I went and moved the pot that had hot water, had a little spout, and I guess it was full, and I put it from the stove, I pulled it towards me, and when it stopped, well, the water poured out, it hit me right here. And I mean, I had on my left side, it burned so bad, I had a skin, and you could had a full filled with liquid, like pure liquid. So my grandfather, what he did is he split it to get to the wound, and he would put some of that volcanic oil on it. I don't even have a scar. I went on my foot I was chopping wood, and I put the axe behind a knot to pull out, because it was frozen in the snow. And when I went to pull it, it slipped, and it came right at me, and it hit me on my foot. I got a little cut about like that,
What kind of house did you live in Questa?
The house was adobe with thick walls. The windows were just single pane, so the corners had a buildup of moisture when my grandma was cooking. All the corners had a buildup from the moisture. We had wood burning stoves in all the rooms, and they were like long, okay, with the door in front, and a little thing at the bottom that slid back and forth for the air coming into the stove, and that controlled how the wood burned. And my grandma could hear her getting up at 2 or 3 in the morning and stoking it again and going back. And it was, that was the life we lived.
So who lived in the house with you?
My grandmother, my grandfather, and myself. And then my sister came to live with us. But just 3 of us. And then there was 4 when my sister decided that she was going to graduate from Questa High School with herself. And so when my mom brought us to Questa for the summer, we sent her, we didn't have a telephone, so we had to go to the grocery store and communicate to there. And I went there and I called my mom, told her that not to bother coming to pick me up because I wasn't going back to Albuquerque because I wanted to graduate from Questa. To me, that was something that came from deep down inside. That made me a Questeño. That cemented. I had relatives and cousins, but that wasn't enough for me. I wanted to graduate from Questa. I wanted to be that part of my life. Where'd you graduate from? Questa High School. We went to the jail of New Mexico. There was that room with books, and she found one about tin work. So she bought that one. And I found a book. Like I said, she's from the small town of Penasco, and there's they separate, and in the same area. And I found a book called The History of San Juan del Llano de Neopomucena, and that's where her mom grew up. So I bought that book for her. The lady that had it was into jail a lot, but it wasn't her part of the country. Had a $15 tag on it, so I bought that. So that afternoon, when I got to my daughter's house, her mom was there. I said, I got something for you guys. And so they started looking at my wife. Said, I've seen this book before. I said, after I looked to page 91, there was a history of her family. Her dad, her mom, and her grandfather. He was a school teacher and a principal, and all his kids and what he did. And then his dad's name, his dad's name was Elias, and he had a grocery store. And there was a lot of history there for them. So I really, really happy to have that book because that filled her in on her roots from Penasco. And I have filled her in on her roots from Questa. So it makes her more familiar as a Norteña. And her Spanish is a little bit, she learned it in college. Okay.
Well, I was going to ask you, so you grew up speaking Spanish?
My first language is Spanish, yes.
But did you speak Spanish with your daughter?
Most of her great. I do once in a while speak nothing but Spanish to her. Vamos, ¿qué quieres? ¿Te gusta esto? And she understands pretty much everything.
Have you done the Cumbres and Toltec?
Said
Cumbres and Toltec out of Chama or Chama de Antonito?
the in Chama? Yes, we did a few years ago. My sister got tickets for all her family, and one of the nephews didn't want to go. She said, "Hey, I got an extra ticket. You want to go?" I said, "Don't ask me twice." So we went, drove all the way to Chama, and we got on the train. What a beautiful train. Then in the back, they had a big, like a box truck, open. I rode back there. I had a jacket that I had purchased from the Balloon Fiesta. I wore that. It was nice and warm. People asked me, because people from all over asked me questions about the Balloon Fiesta. I also wore that to Washington. Anyway, we went to halfway point, and they had the meal you wouldn't believe. They got, 30 or 40 pies, different flavors. The food was excellent. You could eat as much as you wanted. Then on the way back, the train stopped at one of the stops where it let out a bunch of steam. So I went back there and I positioned myself between the cabooses, wasn't the cabooses anyway. I was back there and I was sitting crouched down, and I was this lady that I'd seen coming when I was going out. She gave me a big smile, and I guess she saw. Well, she went out there and flirted with me. It was two old people, both white hair, and I was in my 60s, flirting with each other. I thought that was fun. And she asked me if I was from Albuquerque. I said, yeah. I said, well, darn her, she said, I'm from California. Now, so much for that one. But it was nice to meet people and just talk to them. And we rode back, and we drove back to Albuquerque that evening. And one of my classmates lived in a small town called Los Ojos. She married, he's part Indian, part Hickory Indian. And so she married him, and they spent time in Europe when I was there. And her daughter was born in Europe. So we still communicate. Her youngest brother has a restaurant in Questa. That guy is one of the best cooks and bakers I have ever seen. He made a cake one year about this big, this wide, about this tall for my sister and brother-in-law go there at the end of the year, and they spend the summer there. So they have a big party, and they took that cake. At the end of the night, the number of crumbs. And I see people going there, getting a knife, scraping off the icing and the cherries,
What's it called? What's it called? The restaurant?
The restaurant's called Frank's Sweets and Eats. And like I say, his beard grew long. It grew longer than mine. So he had a contest to who could, I guess, the longest hair on his beard would get a cake or something, So I guess 6.5. I missed it by 3/4 of an inch. He said 7.25, and it was some girl wanted it, so they come and get your cake. But he does things for that. He also puts photographs of all the veterans from World War I, II, Vietnam on his walls. They're all over. And one of the nice things about Questa, we have a big empty field, and the mountain behind it is called Flag Mountain. That's the big tall one. And I have a cousin who lets us use the field. We have 1,000 flags all lined up, and perfect lining. And that's the foreground for the mountain, the background. And I have literally hundreds of photographs of that. But this year, they did something different. They put banners with the people that went to when New Mexico became a state in 1912. 1918, World War I started, we had about 50 people whose names were on that banner. World War II had over possibly 100 people that went to fight World War II. Also, names of people that I knew that I didn't know they went to World War II because I was young. They were still living in town. So I knew a bunch of them. And then they had Korea, Vietnam, and then the ones, was a Desert Storm and the other ones, the names of all of them. So I photographed all of those.
Called Flag Mountain when you were growing up?
Flag Mountain, yes. It's, let me see, I might be able to put up a photograph. It's a mountain that we can't go anywhere because the mountain, in the canyon, we get into the canyon, it's 13 miles from there to Red River. Then you go to the top, and then you come down on the other side to Eagle Nest. And from there you go to the Vietnam Memorial, okay? And that is interesting. I've been there. In 1970, when I got out, Mr. Westfall was a Marine. He got killed in Vietnam. So he decided to take that part of the property he owned and build a memorial. And for Memorial Day weekend, bikers from all the veterans, there are probably 1,000 bikes out there. And they have a big area where we can, circular, where we can sit. Down below, they have people to speak. Then we call people for awards. One of my friends, when I got out in August, and I was at the bar drinking, of course, and all of a sudden I'm talking to my friend. All of a sudden from this side, I feel a guy give me a hug. I turn around. His name was Charlie Cisneros. He said, Adrian, I got drafted. What should I do? I was pretty upset. I said, look, just do your tours and get out. That's enough, And so he did, but he left in September. And the following June, he got killed in Cambodia. The whole squad was annihilated. There was nothing left of them. He filled them with bullets. So when this coffin came home, the guys, messed around until they finally opened it. It was just an empty coffin, basically. A few bones. The pants were flat. The jacket was flat. There was nothing there of him. Because basically, they riddled him with bullets. And he's one of the few that got killed in Vietnam. And I get chills when I talk about him. Because when he told me, I found out later he had 2 years or 2 or 3 years of college. He could have gone to OCS's Officer Candidate School and become a second lieutenant, but he's still been out in the front line. But it hurt me when I found out. It still does. Like right now, I don't know if you can see the goose pimples, but they're there because I I think that sometimes the advice I gave him is the reason that he didn't re-enlist for another year. And he was 11B, which is Bravo, and infantry. So he was on the front lines, and it hurts me that it happened, because sometimes I think, did he take my advice? Was I partially responsible for his death? I mean, I feel guilty a lot for a lot of years. I don't anymore, because I realize that, when you join the military, you go where you're told. You don't get to choose. You go where you're told. You do what they ask you to do, and that's the extent of it. When your time is up, you say goodbye and get the heck out of there and go home. Here.
So when you were growing up, they didn't have a Spanish name for that mountain. They called it Flag Mountain.
Well, there was a canyon where we could herd the cows into the canyon that comes off of it, and I'm very familiar with that canyon, because we used to go up there probably 4 times during the summer, because that was just part of our life. Antonio LaForette, the little guy with the white beard, the small one, okay, and the lady to the left I think is his wife, and then those kids are already great grandfathers, and they live in Questa. The roots are still in Questa, and we're all related. But that part of the family began in about 1850, between 1845 and 1850. And the tall guy, his name is Jose Martinez. His wife was about maybe 4'10". He was close to 6 feet tall. You can see that the part of his head was cut off, But
so the LaForette came in around 1850?
Around 1845 to 1850, yeah. And I showed this to a friend the other day. He looked at that face, and he told me, he says, "You look just like him." And that's why, I've had this beard since 1976, but when I saw it, he said, "You do." I don't know, I can't see it. Maybe you can see the cheeks and the eyes or whatever, but he says I resemble him a lot, so it made me happy as heck, that.
Was he a fur trapper or something? Was he a fur trapper?
Yes, he was, yes. Him and his dad were both fur trappers. But later on, there was a lady from Questa who wrote the history of Questa all the way back to prehistoric ages, when before there was actually people, went back to the dinosaur age, and through history, and told about how Questa became that mountain, slowly came out of the earth and just rose up, and it's got, like the Sandias, I don't know if you notice, one side has a lot of rock. Okay, they said that rock used to be dirt, but the dirt fell forward, and that's why you see all the dirt leaning up against it. But at one time, they say it was all solid rock. I mean, solid mountain. But the dirt fell down probably 10, 20, 30,000 years ago, maybe a million years ago. And, it's just things that I've learned about my state and other things. It's just amazing that New Mexico is, because I was born in San Francisco, California, but I came out here as an infant. And, okay, one more story. When I went to jail, I was in New Mexico a few years back. You're on a line about, at noon, get together and standing in line, get fruits and whatever. Everybody asked me, "Where are you from? Where are you from?" They said, "Where are you from?" I said, Taos County, village of Questa. About 4 or 5 people back said, "Hey, did you say you're from Questa?" I said, "Yes, I got to talk to you." So we sat down, got our food, sat down. Within a minute, he was my first cousin. Okay, his dad and my dad were brothers. Okay, we talked a little bit more. And he says, "Well, I was born in San Francisco." I said, "So was I." He says, "Oh my gosh." He says, then he tells me, "I was born in 1946, so I was born in 1947. So we figured as infants, we knew each other." And we even joked, said, maybe we wore the same diapers, But it was so intriguing to go there and within minutes find a relative, And
Where was this?
Huh?
Where was this?
Over here in Albuquerque, the Genealogical Society of New Mexico. And I joined because I had the interest in finding who I was. And I'd ask questions of my grandparents. ¿De quién es esta gente? ¿De quién es este hombre? ¿Cómo, how am I related to his people? And they'd fill me in on how, And like my uncle across the little ditch he was irrigating, his wife was also a LaFore. And I didn't know that for many years. And her brother, Otoniel, had a great-grandson named Joey Martinez from this, related to this guy. And he was big and tall, but he was a heavy-set. He drank a lot, big heavy-set. And we went to stay in a cabin that people rented. He was there working the desk. And so I didn't know he was related to me then until later on. And it's so interesting to also say, wow, we were related.
When you went to school in Questa, was it in English or Spanish?
Well, it was a mix because some of those kids just could not learn to speak English. And we all spoke Spanish, all of us. The thing was that some people couldn't speak English. Like one guy, you could say the word napkin. We called it a napkin. And I made fun of it. Well, not really fun. We were having lunch in the bar at the pool table. And I went to this town to get some fantastic burgers. When we got back, the bags were here. He said, "Possibly napkin. ¿Qué quieres? Un napkin. ¿Qué?" And I laughed. He said, "Un napkin." And a big cuss word after that. So we still joke about it. And that was, my daughter's almost 50 years old, so over 50 years ago. And we have a lot of things. We have two things in common. Number one, we all have at least one nickname. Some of us have two or three, and some of us have nicknames that they won't use in front of us, only behind our back. Number two is basically we're all related, okay? And we have that in common. We go after a while, primo, and sometimes, this guy I know, their grandmother and my grandmother were sisters. I didn't know that till maybe 10 years ago. And so we see each other, ¿Cómo está, primo? Everywhere you go, you got a primo. And I got probably 80% of Questa is primos, okay, maybe even more than that. And because sometimes you look at their relatives, sometimes there was a Cisneros thrown in there with the Ortegas. And the Ortegas they're a big family. It's the Ortegas, Cisneros, Raels. I'm also my grandmother's Rael. So I'm related to every single Rael in Questa is my cousin. No way they can get away from it, okay? So it's fantastic. Sometimes, like, there's a girl there, her mom was from Cerro, and she married Eliseo Rael. So I'm showing my photographs that I put on pictures of New Mexico. It's a site, if you go in the pictures of New Mexico, the mountains that you see are all mine. Well, the flag mountain I'm telling you about, with the sun going up is red, and down below is green, and then there's red. And I've gotten comments galore, which inspired me to go back to photography. And right now, there's a town in northern Mexico called Costilla, a little town a few miles away, Amalia. They're right on the Colorado line. They have annual fiestas, and they got over 1,000 people to come to them from all over the United States. Some people come from Europe, okay? They live in Europe, and they fly all the way there just to meet other people, other relatives, and see who died, who's got new kids, and all this is new to them. And it's exciting to go, and for them to go, and they do it every year. We used to have annual fiestas, but the drug scene took over, and now we don't have, it's horrible. We have lots of intelligent people, but we also have a lot of people that are involved in drugs. That hurts me. Yeah, but, it's all to their own, And I myself was involved in it many years ago, but now I'm totally clean. Alcohol, I gave it up 41 years, going on 41 years. Cigarettes back in 72 when I got out of the military. I gave up, my wife gave me up in 85. And I recently, because of this, I became a medical cannabis patient. And that was at the beginning of the 2000. But I gave it up. I'm going on 15 months, totally, completely marijuana-free. Oh, I feel so good, I do. Once it got out of my system, I could come out of the shadows and say, yes, I am who I am. And they question me, and I don't care, But before, I said, no, don't talk to me, But I realized later on that everybody knew what I was doing. But I told myself, now nobody knows. Hey, one day at a time. It adds up to 4 years. And, same thing with what I just did, Now I'm going on 15 months. Oh, that's not a long time. Yeah, I know it isn't, but I did it one day. I'm doing it one day at a time. So you can understand it's going to take a while to get to the next stage. My great-grandmother took care of me also, and she wanted a little girl, so I can get a haircut until I came to Albuquerque. But even with long hair, I still wasn't a little girl. But it was fun. I'm thankful that I was 2 years old when she died. And I remember going to, she lived next door, and they had her stretched on because there you bury you within a day or two. And she was stretched out on a bed. She was wearing a brown dress, her little scarf. I remember standing there looking at her, wondering why my grandmother didn't move, And then we had the rosary. My cousin put me up on his shoulders. You speak Spanish? Poquito, no? Anyway, when we got to the home, the people were outside standing, you know, we had to sort of work our way in. Then let me try to see if I can translate to English. It was like, get out of the way, get out of the way. I want to see my grandma. La herencia que era a mi grandma, what was it? A mi grandma madre, my grandmother and mom. Okay, so la herencia, and they still tease me about it, you know. Well, a few, like my cousin. Well, Jake is already gone. He went to college, became a teacher in Taos, and he was a math teacher. He taught in Penasco, and I think he was not my wife, but her older sister was one of his students. So all of a sudden, everything just closed up, you know. And I'm thankful that I can go there and feel comfortable that sometimes you talk to somebody and they want to talk to you and they say, ¿Quién es este cabrón? ¿De dónde vino? You know? Hey, ¿qué pasa con ustedes? ¿Por qué andan enojados? And they, once they realize speaking the same dialect as them, ¿de dónde eres? Soy de la Cuesta, pero tengo gente aquí en Penasco. ¿Quién es tu gente? Well, Roger Martinez, el junior, senior, los dos, y su hijo, el Elías, is my son's first cousin. So all of a sudden, era norteño. Yeah, I'm a norteño. So that says, hey, cálmate, you know. So after a while, they don't want to beat me up anymore or run me out of town. Get in your car and get the heck out of here. But, you know, it works that way. Throughout my life, I've encountered people like that, but they quickly realize that I'm basically one of them, okay? I speak, my dialect is 17th century Spanish, and people hear me when I worked at the VA hospital, me and Jesse, during Costilla, we speak in our Spanish. Somebody goes, hey, I know where you guys are from. I say, why are you guys are norteños? How do you know? It's just the way you speak, you know? Because our Spanish is different. You go to El Paso, it's a whole different Spanish, completely different, you know? They say, how say turkey, how do they use it? We call it a ganso. They call it, I forget what the name they use, you know? And you know what they call us? We're manitos. Because here, when you talk to mi hermano this, hermano that, or mano Plajeres, mano Juan, because that's how we address them, okay? Because we use the word mano, they call them manitos, which is Spanish for little brother, okay? We call them brothers, you know, and that's just part of our language, you know? It's part of respect to call them mano franca, or whatever. We change our names. Like our Spanish is, you know, they used to call a truck as a camión. We call it una troca. Our cars are un carro. Ain't no camiñones here, you know. And so our language has changed a lot. In San Luis, Colorado, about 20 miles north of the New Mexico line, they have a language also of their own. They're teaching the kids how to speak the Spanish that we speak, but with the new words, okay? And I see kids with a picture of a truck, you know, and on the side said troca, and on the kids with a car. And it's our language. We learned it as a result of being Americanized 1912. We changed our language completely. I speak English, I speak Spanish, I also speak Spanglish. But hablar inglés, español in the same sentence, it makes sense, okay? Because we know how we learn a language good enough that we can combine the two, and, you know, we're comfortable.
Thanks for listening to Luminaria. You can reach me at luminariapod@gmail.com. Our intro and outro music is of our Silviana, performed by Nieves Anaya and his daughter Ernestina Anaya at Arroyo Hondo, New Mexico in 1940. It's part of the Juan Bautista Rael collection at the Library of Congress.